Hi, everyone. Today, let's talk about Jerome Powell's comments once again. Then we'll talk about the economic calendar just for a moment. Then we'll hit the charts. Then we'll look at my results for the day and my positions going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So Jerome Powell didn't add a ton of things, but I do want to mention one specific comment. If you want more details about what he talked about, definitely check out yesterday's video. But I do want to highlight here, he did walk back his comments just a little bit, saying that there's no preset course in terms of rate hikes. The market pretty much took his comments as we're going to get 50 basis points at the March meeting. And he did walk this back a little bit, saying that we're still looking at the data and no decision has been made. And this kind of stabilized markets here for today. But of course, he did mention that the terminal rate still could go up from the previous meeting, which means maybe we get an additional 25 basis point hike instead of 50 basis points here in March. And we just continue to go at 25 basis points for one additional tick compared to what we were expecting before. So we'll have to keep an eye on Fed futures as we get closer, but right now the market still thinks 50 basis points is possible, but maybe that tapers off as we get closer to the March meeting. Looking at the economic calendar here, you can see the JOLTS report came in hotter than expected by 200,000. That was probably expected. This is going back to January. Pretty much all the reports in January were pretty hot. So it does make sense that the JOLTS report for January was also pretty hot. And then just highlighting once again here on Friday, we do have non-farm payrolls and the unemployment rate. Those are going to be pretty impactful to the markets. There's a wide range of expectations in terms of the expected move for options on Friday. So just keep that in mind as we go into the end of the week here. And looking at the Beige book results here, 6 of the 12 districts had little or no growth in February, which is good in terms of inflation, but bad obviously in terms of economics. It did mention a potential slight decline in first quarter GDP, which is good. The economy still looks like it's starting to cool off a little bit despite the hot readings that we've had over the last month or two. So keep this in the back of your mind as we go forward. We are getting some data that's showing economic slowing. Moving over to the charts here on the 15 and the 1 hour here on the S&Ps. You can see the day was basically flat, some ups and downs here, but we finished pretty strong, which is interesting. We are at the 144 EMA, 21 EMA here on the 1 hour chart acting as resistance. I would expect some rejection off of those levels. We did get rejection when we tested the 144 here early in the session, came back in, found that support at the trend lines like we talked about, and then bounced into the end of session. If we see a break of the early in the session, then we should be looking for a move back up to 401, somewhere in that zone. That's what I would be looking for back at these previous highs. You can see that high volume node sitting right here at 401. So lots of volume where we are, certainly good support area if it holds. Then we're looking at 401, low volume through here back up to 404. So keep that in mind. Could move fairly quickly back into this previous resistance line. Right at that 403.60, and then right at the trend lines at the low that we were talking about. If those break tomorrow, then we have some pretty substantial downside, probably to about 394. Moving over to the NASDAQ here on the 15 and the 1 hour on the Heikin-Ashi chart, I just wanted to highlight here that both of these are bullish into the end of the session. Money supply index showing bullishness on both charts, almost overbought a little bit here on the 15-minute chart. At the end of day, we're also retesting the 100 EMA here on the 15-minute chart and the 200 EMA here on the hourly chart. So similar thesis, lots of areas of potential rejection. We also have the VWAP sitting up here at 296.80. So pretty much right where we finished the day. Certainly looks bullish into the end of the day. Wouldn't surprise me if we did get a push back up to this previous day's close, somewhere around 300 to 301. That would be a decent area of resistance in my opinion. If we're going to break down though, you have to look at this 296.50 level. If 296.50 breaks, then we're looking down to about 292.50. So we're right in the middle of this consolidation area. Could push either way and stay nimble here going into tomorrow's session with the NASDAQ. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow here on the daily charts. I want to highlight these on the daily here just so you have a better perspective. You can see the Russell tagging that 55 EMA here on the daily chart. Got strong rejection from that level, so keep an eye on this. Got a nice doji indecision. This is still a downtrend here on the daily chart, so certainly could bounce up and get rejection and move lower. And I certainly think that that is possible. I think we got an initial rejection off this previous low in the 55-day moving average, but RSI and MACD both say that we're going lower here. Not a lot of volume until we get down to about 182, so probably this trend line is going to be your bigger support, and this is probably going bearish here tomorrow on the Russell. Dow looks a little bit stronger. Got very close to tagging these previous lows, 144 EMA. Strong rejection from there, looked a little stronger into the close. MACD looks a little bit more bullish going into tomorrow's session, so keep an eye on the Dow. Might outperform a little bit tomorrow. The Russell does look a little bit weaker in my opinion. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple doing as you would expect, bounced a little bit and then went sideways. Still a bullish trend here on the 4-hour chart, still holding up fairly well. Is below the VWAP here on the 4-hour though, so interesting. Probably going to come back down and retest this trend line at some point. Probably going to make a lower high, come back down, find support at 151, 151.20. Then we'll have to see what happens if we do get a bounce and a new high, or if it breaks down from here and pushes back to 148. Otherwise, looking at Tesla, did exactly what we thought it was going to do, came back into that 144 EMA on the 4-hour chart, tested the highs here from Friday the 27th. So now we have to see what happens. If it's going to bounce a little bit, come back up to around 187, 188, that would be interesting. Test this previous low. Otherwise, if it breaks down, still lots of downside potential. Could come down, find support at 172, 173 back in this previous high volume. Otherwise, looking at 165 and the 200 SMA here on the 4-hour. Did get a slight step down on the 4-hour for the MACD. Is oversold here on RSI, so keep that in mind. Might get a slight bounce, establish a new trend, and then continue lower here. Something that I would watch for on Tesla. Moving over to Alphabet and Amazon, both moderately bullish. Google holding above the 200 SMA on the 4-hour chart. Amazon throwing wicks to the downside, pretty much holding within this zone. Looks like $93 seems to be a pretty strong level. Would like to see it break above this area of higher volume. Continues to sit just below there. 94.25 is that level that we would look to see a breakout. If we can get above there, then you're probably looking at about $97 back into this previous consolidation high. But otherwise, slightly bullish here going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to transports. Pretty much what we thought, rallied back into this previous zone. Didn't quite get up to 235, so I would expect that to happen tomorrow. We have that area of higher volume on the hourly chart and the 200 SMA up there, probably going to act as pretty strong resistance. Looking at the 4-hour chart, area of higher volume, right where we bounced. Looking for that push up to that next high at 238 would be your price target on the 4-hour chart. Momentum on both cases looking slightly bullish. RSI on the hourly looks bullish. RSI on the 4-hour still looks a little bit concerning, but huge volume today, especially on that very bullish candle in the middle of the session. You can see how high that volume was compared to these previous candles, generally indicating that this is going to get a continuation here tomorrow. Looking at staples and discretionary, not much to add here, both holding within their range. Did get a nice little wick here at the end of the day on the 4-hour chart for discretionary, so that looks moderately bullish, probably going to push back into that 145 level. Staples also throwing a wick to the downside, also looks moderately bullish into the end of the session. Price target for that would be about 72.60 back at this previous low and area of higher volume. If you zoom out here, you can maybe make an argument for 73.11, 72.90 in this zone. Back in the previous center of this consolidation, that would be interesting. But overall, they're both a little bit bullish in my opinion. Moving over to semis, pretty much as expected, we tested support, found it, moved up to the previous resistance. Now we're testing that. This will be something to watch tomorrow. Looked very strong throughout the session. Does look like it could go higher here. If it does break out, that would be very strong. Probably going to push the NASDAQ higher. We did leave a gap here, which is interesting. Certainly could come down, sweep that gap, and then move higher. So keep an eye on that. Overall, looks bullish, but we are at key resistance, and you have to keep an eye on that. RSI looks very strong. Both MACDs look very bullish. Moving over to yields, not a ton to add here. 2-year continuing to sit pretty much at its highs, holding above that 5 level. Did dip below it, like we talked about it might do. Actually got quite a bit lower than I would have considered here. Then it quickly rejected and moved back above 5. 10-year continues to sit just above this previous consolidation zone, so it is moderately bullish here, might move a little bit higher tomorrow, but it has been holding generally within this range for quite a while. Momentum on both charts moderately bullish. RSI on the 10-year looks pretty bullish. RSI on the 2-year looks pretty neutral. Moving over to the dollar, generally unchanged on the day, sold off from resistance, found support. So we're chopping within these support and resistance levels like we talked about. Probably going to push back up to this 105.93, 94 back at this previous zone. Looks like we're going to push in there. Everything looks bullish still. Momentum on the 4-hour is fading slightly, but 1 hour looking to turn back up. RSI on the 1 hour actually at an area where you could see rejection and maybe a downturn. That would be interesting. But RSI on the 4-hour does look bullish still. It's worth noting we did get that overbought condition, which generally does lead to a more consistent downtrend. So keep an eye on that. We do get below the SMA here on the 4-hour RSI. That would be interesting. And maybe we get a little bit deeper dip back into this maybe 105.20 zone. So you get a little bit lower high, come back down, test the highs of these previous levels and these lower support lines, and then we get a push back up to 106, maybe even 106.15 or so. Moving over to JNK, it did just exactly what we expected. After the resistance, we came down, tested that support level, and now we're seeing if this is going to hold. If this breaks down here tomorrow, that's going to be a key development, watching this level very closely tomorrow. If this breaks down, that's going to say more bearish price action to come, in my opinion. 4-hour momentum says that's going to happen. 4-hour RSI says that's going to happen. 1 hour showing a little bit of potential support. Certainly could bounce from here, but keep an eye on this one closely. Looking at all the EMAs and VWAP on the hourly point to more downward price action, very similar to like it did when we came here and found a bounce. But these upper level EMAs and 200 SMA are getting pretty close here. If we come in, probably not going to retest the upper bound in my opinion. And then we would break down. That would be very interesting. Like I said, this looks weak. If it breaks down now, that's going to spell lower prices across the board in my opinion. Moving over to the VIX to finish up with the charts here. Looks like we're going to make a higher low on the VIX. Certainly could come in and find support at the SMA here on the 4-hour RSI. Momentum on the 4-hour turning bearish. Momentum on the hourly also turning bearish here at the end of day. So keep a lookout for this. Maybe we come in, make a full double bottom. That would be interesting, but certainly could make a lower high as well. So looking to see if that 1860 level breaks. If that does break down, certainly could find some support back at the trend line right around 1820, right at the bottom of this wick here. That would be interesting as well. Hourly momentum says weakness, but 4-hour RSI still holding up here. Certainly could make that little bit of a bounce and a push back into this 2030 to 2050 level. Moving over to my results for the day, not too bad. So you can see had a slight profit on my IRA position, did roll this call down to 186, going to get assigned on that position, which works out quite well. 40-cent credit, so did lose a little bit of money to that covered call, but did help cover a lot of downside. You can see this position was minus $341 on the stock position, but I covered almost all of that with covered call position, so worked out fairly well. Do have one put going into tomorrow's session. This 295 put here for today is going to expire worthless, so I did make money on both of these puts. I did roll this second put up from 294 to 295. I do think we might get some downside potential here, so I didn't open the second put that I usually have on. I might look to open that tomorrow. We'll see what the markets are doing. But I certainly think there's a potential for some downside, especially after the pretty strong rally we had into the end of day. So choppy day, not a lot of directional decision. So really stay open-minded for both directions in tomorrow's session. Let me know down in the comments section what you thought of Jerome Powell's comments today and what you think the non-farm payrolls are going to be like on Friday. Definitely going to be interesting. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting recently. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.